it's well known among economists that markets are inefficient from the narrowest perspective. So to make it simple, suppose you and I, suppose you sell me a car, okay? We may make a good deal for ourselves. We're not taking into account the effect on him. It's what's called an externality. And there's an effect. If you sell me a car, it increases gas prices, increases pollution, increases congestion, and that extends very broadly. These so-called externalities can be very large. Now, in financial institutions, it's far worse. They're in the business of taking risks. Suppose a bank lends money. It cares about one thing, its own profits. Now, there's a property called systemic risk. The risk that if the market, say, crashes somewhere, it's going to be contagious. Okay, and there is that phenomenon. It's monstrous, in fact. But the investor doesn't think about that. Can't. You think about your own risk. You cannot think about the cost to others of the fact that contagion may destroy a system. That's not part of your calculations. That's another externality. So the system is sort of built to magnify extremely dangerous properties. And this happens all over the place. I mean, what are called the externalities that just, dominate life. Systemic risk is an externality that's not considered, which would bring down the financial system repeatedly if you didn't have state power intervening. Well, there's another one that's even bigger. That's destruction of the environment. Destruction of the environment is an externality. In market interactions, you don't pay attention to it. If you're, say, take tar sands, if you're a major energy corporation and you can make profit out of exploiting tar sands, you simply do not take into account the fact that your grandchildren may not have a possibility of survival. That's an externality. And in the moral calculus of capitalism, greater profits in the next quarter outweigh the fate of your grandchildren. And of course, it's not just your grandchildren, but everyone's. Markets are supposed to be magnificent because they increase your choices. Actually, they restrict your choices. You think about it for a minute. Suppose I want to get home from work at night. Okay, the market offers me a choice. I can have a Ford or a Toyota. It does not offer me the choice of a Subway. What I want, what's good for me, what's good for the environment, what's good for my children, but that's not offered in the market. Markets offer individual consumption. And the enormous stress on the importance of markets is part of the way to drive people towards looking for yourself, amassing as many commodities as you can, forget everything else. In fact, if you think about it, every one of you has taken an economics course or read about it, then you know what markets are supposed to be. Markets are supposed to be systems in which informed consumers make rational choices, right? I'm sure every one of you has turned on a television set. Now, what do you see when you turn on a television set? You see that there's a huge industry, public relations industry, which began in the United States and Britain, incidentally, huge industry which is designed to undermine markets. Every ad is an attempt to create an uninformed consumer who will make an irrational choice, right? Huge effort on the part of the business world to undermine markets, but to keep the aspect that's useful for profit and power, namely separating people from one another, focusing on individual choices, not working with your neighbor. But if you have private ownership of the means of production, it means that, first of all, the people, it's not just one person, it's a institution, so you get like, maybe it's a corporation or private business or something. First of all, internally, it's essentially a totalitarian institution, almost necessarily. There's a group at the top, maybe a person or a group, they make the decisions, they give orders, people down the hierarchy get the orders, transmit them. At the very bottom, you get people who are permitted to rent themselves to survive. That's called a job, wage labor. And you get the outside community who's allowed to purchase what you produce, and of course they're very heavily propagandized to make them want to consume it even if they don't. So I mean, that's the nature of the system. It's kind of about as close to totalitarianism as you can imagine. Private enterprise works just the way Milton Friedman says. You give the worst possible service at the highest possible profit. That's what it means to be in the business. If you try to be benevolent, you're out of the business because somebody undercuts you. So the nature of the system, as insight goes way back to Adam Smith, is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit and market share and give the worst possible service. Same with HMOs and everything else.